Good morning, welcome everybody. This is a webinar sponsored by the European funded project HapTake, which is a digital European program funded project, which has an important aim that is to scale up solutions, especially in the context of secure development, especially DevSecOps, of small, medium enterprises that wants to escalate their products within the European market. As a part of the project, we today have a webinar that is concentrating on the relationship between the incoming Cyber Resilience Act regulations and the, let's say, implications in the creation of digital products with digital elements. And today with us there is Angelo D'Amato, which is the founder of Vulnir and also a cyber expert. Together with him, we are working as rapporteurs within two working groups in Senelec. One is working group 9 that is responsible for the horizontal standards for implementing the Cyber Resilience Act in the different categories of digital of products with digital elements, and myself, who played the role of rapporteur within the working group 6 in the context of smart meter gateways. Angelo, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you so much, and thank you also for the invitation, and it's really an honor for me also to be invited for this intervention on standardization and how standardization are supposed to keep up the speed of the AI. And so this is also your part that you will show later, and then at the end of this we will have also a kind of small discussion on how AI and regulation will converge. So I will share my presentation. 1 second, and I will gonna give an introduction on the latest update on the standard that I'm working on, and update on the vulnerability handling part. So thank you so much also for the introduction, Enrico. This is just a slide where I usually have to summarize what are my activities. Like you mentioned, I am a rapporteur for PT2, that is the generic security requirement for horizontal as an horizontal standard for CRA, and PT3, that is the vulnerability handling requirement, and namely are the 40,000-1-4 PT2, and PT3 is the 40,000-1-3. And I think that we are on the same boat, Enrico, because you are also rapporteur for the smart meter gateway in the working group 6. So today I'm covering in my presentation, I will provide you with a little bit of context on the horizontal standard and the relation with vertical standard, and I want to focus on providing you with some update on the vulnerability handling. Why the focus on vulnerability handling is because, as you will see later, we will then understand what is the interrelation between AI and the standards like the vulnerability handling that will have a huge impact on the product into the market. And we have a last session of question and answer. So let's set up a little bit of the context. The discussion today, of course, is focused on the AI, and I'm recently sharing this slide that they are a screenshot from the Zero-Day Clock Initiative. Zero-Day Clock Initiative are companies that they set up together, like Palo Alto, VulnCheck, and other companies that they created some stats and some statistics and some forecast on what is the time spent between the discovery of vulnerability and the exploitation of the vulnerability itself. And this is a little bit to show you what changed during the years. In 2018, when you discover a vulnerability, in average, to exploit that vulnerability, the time elapsed was 2.3 years. And it's a huge time that human could have taken time to think about it, how to solve, and they had time to have the patches process and so on. But now, as per today, the time from the finding an exploitation and exploiting, finding a vulnerability and then exploiting that vulnerability is down to 1 day. And this is already a small number compared to 2018. And there is a forecast that in 2016 we will go down to 10 hours. But the number that is also impressive me is that in 2018, the distance of time, the elapsed time between a vulnerability found and exploited is just 1 minute. So it's happening almost real time. And this is something that if you do things manually, you cannot keep up. And how to prevent this, how to make sure that we are resilient against this type of attack that are happening in real time, is to have the support of AI tools in the defense part, have a strong regulation that will enable this, but also to have a more serious implementation of security by design. And these are the key words that we want to highlight for today. This is just a kind of overview of CRA, what are the main obligations. And here in this image, you can see that CRA, the aim of CRA is to cover not only the ultimate security of the product itself, but all the life cycle from inception to the release of the product on the market and decommissioning. You start from a risk assessment. You have all the requirements for the product itself, vulnerability handling requirement, all the conformity assessment that you can apply for your product, and the vulnerability handling obligation that needs to be maintained for all the support period. And then you have also something called reporting obligation that will be activated on 11 of September 2026. That will be even not only live while you are having your product placed on the market, but also after the support period for your product. Yeah. This is a little bit to align on the main milestone. You can see that the law was created and was enforced in 2024, and now we will see that in 11 of June there will be the notification rule for the CABs, conformity assessment bodies for CRA, and then like I mentioned already, we have in 2026, 11 of September, the first obligation that will be entering into application, that is the reporting obligation. If you have an exploitable vulnerability in your product, you need to report to the single reporting platform, and you need to make sure that you are aware about exploitable vulnerability within your product. We are all know that the standardization request is asking us to deliver the standard on 30 of October 2026, vertical and horizontal. There are some delays into this process. I saw that most of the vertical from ETSI at least were around November, December 2026, and also my standard. We are trying to do our best to keep it for August. It's a little bit challenging, and I think that we will need to expect a little bit of delay there also. And for now, the planning is end of 2026. We are not going over that, so manufacturers should not be scared to say, okay, we don't have so much time. You have still 1 year left, so be prepared. And if you participate also to the standard, you can be up to date on what is happening. And the entering an application for everybody is 11 December 2027. CRA scope is not is not including only the product itself, like the read the R 2022-30, that is the activation of the Radio Equipment Directive Article 3.3 D, E, and F. That was the first regulation to that was targeting the security of product, but the focus was only to the end goal, securing the product itself, and didn't cover associative services, remote data processing, other components around the product. This is the first main difference that you need to know about CRA, because CRA is also covering the scope as a software. So even a mobile app game, mobile gaming is in the scope of CRA. You need to make sure that you are aware about that. You need to, like I said, cover the security by design, the risk assessment, and the vulnerability handling obligation towards your product. These are a kind of overview of what are the conformity assessment procedure. For the default product are all the products that are not into the list of Annex 3 and 4. You can do self-assessment, and you don't need any third party, and you can even use other standard, not only the harmonized standard, because the harmonized standard, they per se are voluntary, okay? And specifically for default product. Class 1 and class 1, if you use the harmonized standard, you can do the self-assessment, and you don't need a third-party assessment. If you decide to use it partially or not use an harmonized standard, there you need to use a third-party assessment, a notified body. Important class 2, there is no option for self-assessment. You need to go through a third-party assessment, notified body. Then if the product is critical, and of course now there is the definition of what are the activity that you need to do for the critical class are not defined. The envision is to have certification scheme like UCC activated, but we should have the implementation decision from the European Commission. But this is the FOREC situation that you have for critical. And then you have open source that you can do self-assessment, and you have more limited obligation compared to commercial products. We have now what are the overview of the relation. This is a diagram that I put together just to let you understand how complicated it is also, and how many standards we are creating in just a few years, couple of years. So, and how many people are involved in all this process. And this is something that is unique into the standardization world. And I don't think that there was for one initiative so many standards that are developed in parallel as it happened now. It's a big topic. Security is changing, and also the speed of security is changing. We need to make sure that we have also faster process for creating standards that are more aligned with the state of the art. As you can see here, you have already, I didn't naming, and I didn't put all the substandard for working group 6. Of course, you have one. So this is the one from you, Enrico. Sorry that I didn't expand that for your standard, but of course you have also the other group for Senec that are other verticals. But I put it on the bottom, the one from Etsy, where you can see the code EN 304 617. The last two number of the name of the standard is the ID into the standardization request. So it's easy to link up what is the line item and the topic for the standardization request. But this is just to give you an overview. What are the interplay with all the standard? You have in the horizontal that is setting the baseline of all the other standard. We have three main standard. That is the -1, -2. That is defining is a process standard that define the principle and what activity you need to have in place for your secure software development cycle, for your risk assessment, and there are explained what are the minimum expectation for this process. Then there is another process standard that is also important and is the only one for the horizontal that aims for the presumption of conformity. That is the 40,000-1-3. Okay, and here we are focusing on the vulnerability handling obligation, and we will go there for more update later, just to to give you some insight. And then you have the EN 40000-1-4, that is the product security requirement that collects what are the security requirements that you need to consider during the development of your product. And this is a product-related standard. And as you can see in this diagram, you can see also what are the relations. You have the process, you have the risk assessment. When you define the risk assessment, you need also to understand how you mitigate some risk, and you mitigate some risk selecting some security control from the -1-4. And the -1-4 should function as a catalog of security control. These are some a page that that I put together with some of the main link with the latest update and where you can find it. And this is handy when you download the application and you have directly the link ready. And so you can see it after the meeting. And now we are on the main part, that is also the update on the vulnerability handling. And now we are in the second inquiry period, and we are aiming then to solve all the comments and then to have the final version for the final review. And in this slide, you can see that we have 1,945 comments that we are solving now with the group, working group 9. And on the right, you can see also what are the distribution from us. Us is from the Commission. We have 193 comments. Some of them, they are easy. Some of them, they are a huge impact on the document. I will show you later what are the main topics. And then you can see also the distribution between member state of this. This is all just for statistic purpose, just to provide awareness. We have I prepared a kind of overview of what comment we received. You can see from the Commission. So we have some topic that they cover: risk assessment sufficiency, multi-party. So they want us to be a little bit more prescriptive for the risk assessment, to capture the role of the coordinated vulnerability disclosure, to have a more deep requirements for the SBOM, so not focus only on the top level, but also having transitive dependency, having license information, having identifier. And this, of course, as you can imagine, generates a little bit of friction with the market that are not used to go so deep then as an obligation. We will see later, because I have on one slide with all the conflict point, the point that needs to be handled with more care. We have the distribution disclosure, so how you distribute these vulnerabilities. So we are still, this is 12% of the comments are on that, 10% on verification in triage, 10% of remediation, so and 8% on accessibility, because also accessibility is important for the Commission itself. Apart from that, the important message that I want to give you is what are the, let's say, the conflict point, or not the conflict, but where we have more friction. So I will not go into details with all, but only the one in blue, because that I think that is more important. And we need, when we are looking to this friction, because the Commission wants us to have a state of the art a little bit strong and solid. And national standardization body with members that are also coming from the manufacturer field to have a little bit lower the bar. And then also my job, and then your job, Enrico, is that we need to meet all in the middle, and that is the complex part of our job. But here we introduced the requirement enhancement to have a kind of negotiation point, because we have basic requirement, then we introduce a requirement enhancement to say, okay, this requirement enhancement is a little bit beyond the baseline requirement, that only products that are more critical needs to implement. And then we had some view from some member states that we need to refine this concept, modify, and maybe even eliminate because of that point. But of course, we are still in discussion. We have the documentation burden. NSB say maybe too much documentation, we should reduce, and of course like I always say, a policy never stop a vulnerability. But if you don't have a policy, you don't have role and responsibility. You don't know how to react to incident, and you don't know how to make it predictable the process. So this is the reason why it's important. We should not underestimate the importance of having a documented process. Then we have the SBOM. So the Commission is asking us to include more deepness, more transitive dependency as a base requirement. And the NSB, they say, okay, in the law is written top level, let's stop to top level, but everybody knows that top level is not useful for anybody. Imagine with an AI that you give a firmware and maybe is finding more than you, that you stop only at the top level because you don't want to do too much documentation. So this is the reason why it's a challenge. We need to be aware about the transformation that AI is causing to our world, and then how we view on our view on security. Machine readable. If you have machine readable, you can spread the information faster, and then you can have more predictability in the process itself, and more formal view of sharing information of vulnerability. And then we have the evidence that sometimes while we created the assessment criteria in the standard, we were a little bit ambiguous, high level, but we need to make sure that we need to detail more and to clarify the assessment process. We have a limit because being a process standard for a horizontal where we cover all the product, that is a challenge. We need to understand where to stop. And so these are the main challenge that we have. This is for you just to have a kind of timeline. Like I said, we envision a little bit of delay with the publication move to December 2026. We are trying to do our best to advance a little bit the timeline. So, and this is the main point. And my intervention is closed. We can leave the question and answer at the end with you, Enrico. So I can hand over to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Angelo. So I'm going to share the screen. Just give me a second to share it. Okay, yes, you should see it by now. Okay. So my intervention, as I said, it is something that appear on the market after the start of, let's say, our work for the commission and as a rapporteurs, and even after the project uptake started. So I thought it was interesting to go through what I call the dawn of vibes, where the vibes are referred to the phenomena that are rising after, let's say, a lot, especially in the development community, about using AI to vibe code, vibe engineer, vibe hacking, vibe cybersecurity. So vibes are almost everywhere, and they are exploiting heavily the capacity of advanced large language models. So of course, like any kinds of revolution, they are bringing problem, threats, and some points of attention that needs to be discussed or at least shared with you. First of all, who I am the security research lead at Chefreal. That is a spin-off of the Polytechnic of Milano, which is in which mission there is innovation, research, and education. And I'm working since a lot of years in the field of cybersecurity, as you can see. But in a way, going forward beyond what's my background, I use this kind of relatively famous comics to say, no thanks, we are too busy to adopt the LLM or to code in a normal way or to, let's say, ignore the incredibly large number of advantages that coding through AI can bring to the process. Because as a matter of fact, usually we are, let's say, more or less used to the concept of make or buy. which in the recent years became make or use, open sources developed by others or by, but generally, recently, the concept acquired another term that is generated. So there are a lot of one-man companies that are raising, producing even very complex products thanks to the assistance of complex AI systems. Uh, for example, things like OpenAI Codex or Anthropic Cloud Code or Anti-Gravity by Google and so on. There are several indeed. So the point is they make or generate or use or buy. The new paradigm is, of course, highly impacting every layer in the company: governance, decision-making, management, due diligence, law compliance, and nonetheless, not the last one, the cybersecurity aspects, of course. So we have at the dawn of vibes, as I said before, vibes means different kind of things. There are vibe working, vibe engineering, coding, which is the most famous, vibe knowledge, hacking, vibe reversing, for example, reverse code engineering in cybersecurity, and so on. Uh, Generally speaking, it is AI-supported work processes, so there are more or less, I call them Vibe X, where X means one of the many possible kinds of activities. For example, also red teaming or threat modeling could be done in this way. Uh, of course, this is something that is done not only by the cybersecurity point of view, it is done also by the hacking or cybercrime point of view, because Anthropic in the past August they reported that cybercriminals are using AI not just as an advisor, but as an active operator. In the case of Vibe hacking enabling large-scale data extortion. They already identify some actors that are leveraging AI to pass technical interviews, for example, to infiltrate operators within companies. These have been documented by, for example, KnowBe4. One of the Swift company to document this was KnowBe4, and Anthropic themselves documented in this threat intelligence report released in August. Chinese and Russian threat groups have embedded AI across almost every attack stage, and so it is something that is becoming popular in both sides of this of cybersecurity and of cybercrime. But the point is that, of course, vibing something that is hacking or securing something is not something that is so linear. And I use this image, which is, by the way, generated by AI itself, that is that represents the concept of going to the idea, point A, to the actual implementation in code, point B. Often, if you follow closely what an AI such as OpenAI Codex or Anthropic Cloud Code does to go from the point A to the point B, you see that it is a relatively complex and non-linear process. It is going through different kinds of approaches that are abandoned or wrongdoings, change of ideas, and most of all, consumptions of a lot of tokens, which means monies, first of all. So it is a process that somehow is not that easy to govern, especially when you are in the middle of this sort of chaos between A and B. One of the things that is usually done is that AI should reduce the workload, but sometimes increases it, especially with simple text or code corrections due to unsolicited changes. One of the things we see, one of the problems we see, is that often, if not well governed, or if well not, let's say, guided, the AI try to modify not only some of the functionalities that needs to be developed, but sometimes takes decisions that leads to unexpected changes in code that has been already released. So the process of vibe coding is not as simple also because of the hallucination of the AI and because of the many errors that are taken by the AI to and say they are also increasing these kinds of problems as in direct relationship with the complexity of the problem itself. So, agentic systems, for example, self-correct, hiding intermediate errors and consumption and consumer resources through indirect processes. This leads to a process that, in time, start relatively easy, and as soon as the iterations to go towards the final release or adding functionalities or let's say, increasing the complexity of the product leads to a process that is, let's say, rapidly becoming cumbersome. And this is a problem correlated to the points raised by Angelo, because at a certain point where we are near the point B, so near the release of the market, we need to let's say, face the challenge of certificating something that have been developed by the AI, and in some cases of which the developing team has or had limited control. I mean, because the rapidity and efficiency of these coding instruments creates what is called obscure code. That means that the code, if analyzed by a human, is hardly understandable because it's just been generated by an AI. As a matter of fact, for example, I just reported on a sort of day 1 to day 5 and onward kind of process. The first day, it is what I call the wow experience. That is, you tell the agent what he wants to do, it understands everything, just do it with a fast shipping and continuous iteration. The day 1 is a unique experience, by this point of view for a developer. The day 1 and 2 is still works, but the agent delivers clean code quite still quickly. But onward, the point starts to be a little bit more complex. On the days 3 and 4, let's say not exactly 3 and 4, but let's say just in a sort of sequence, the agent contradicts what it decided at the start. It re-implements the same things differently, makes architectural choices I never asked for, and so you start to see some sort of problems. And from the day 5 onward, you spend more time fixing things that was broken than building new features. The context disappears, each session starts from scratch, so the vibes starts to work less efficiently. This is a quite of, let's say, common experience, and at least today, of course, because one of the things we'll see is that vibe, this sort of vibe, let's say, development is going to increase. It is something that is doomed to remain in the market, of course. Sorry, this is an Italian slide. I forgot to translate it, but anyway, the point is that the instruments that are used to program the AI produce a lot of obscure code. That is code that works very well, is distributed, but no developer seriously took the time to review and revise it carefully, especially from the cybersecurity point of view. So it is something that soon or later you have a sort of accumulated debt that was, let's say, as an exchange on the rapid development gained by the Vibe activities. Of course, Vibe is used by hackers also. There is Vibe coding, Vibe reverse engineering, Vibe hacking, Vibe phishing, Vibe digital forensic, Vibe prompt injection, scripting, red teaming. So there are a lot of activities done by the hackers themselves in the same approach. Of course, just in a funny way, there are also sense of vibe coding because you create a system, as I said before, more or less mentioned before, that is built on a lot of, let's say, developments in which you have relatively low control. And so the point is that the overall architecture is stable, works, but you don't know really how much it works, how long it will work. And most of all, as I said before, mentioning the obscure code, if one day these LLMs will be unavailable, and just yesterday in Italy, we had a denial service of all of the three main LLMs simultaneously, then there is a problem that you have an infrastructure that you did not really understood uh, deeply as you were doing when the development was completely manual. The same concept is reported in a sort of picture a highway coding versus engineering gated AI. So it is something that is, let's say, introducing the concept that is not only vibe code but also a sort of AI assisted engineering that is creating something in a sort of, let's say, well built, so like the house on the right side of the slide. Among the sense of just the vibe coding, it is worldwide to report also the results of this paper. That is, they found a IEEE paper found that the edge of the code get hit by feedback loop security degradation. That is essentially problems, increasingly problems that the code generated by AI have in versus the security of development. And that is a problem that, of course, is, let's say, is doomed to remain because, of course, there are other security problems as well arising. For example, a few years ago, there is this sort of, let's say, components that was used within a famous package, PI, that is usually used by the LLMs to create code in Python, for example. It is a package that has 97 million monthly downloads, increased also by the usage of these kinds of package by the AI development instruments. And this was hacked a few weeks ago, and the kinds of act was interesting because it is a sort of new supply chain vulnerability where the supply chain is the kind of libraries ingested by the vibe coder instruments. Nonetheless, the expectations are rising, of course, because I report an X in which this guy, Adam Wolf, right, I believe this new model in cloud code is a glimpse in the future. We will handling towards maybe as soon as the first half of the next year. Software engineering is done. So it says that as very soon we will consider, as we are considering compilers, the AI that are generating code. So we will program in English essentially and use the AI as we are considering the compiler, something that generates a code we don't worry about. This is just to, let's say, have a sort of, let's say, positioning of the bytecode. And of course, there are another problem that is, we speak about two kinds of paradigms, the human in the loop and the human on the loop. Human in the loop means where the human, let's say, the process needs approval from the humans before progressing. So AI asks the confirmation to humans if the results are good and they fulfill the requests. Gradually, we are moving to the human on the loop. That means the system acts autonomously, and the human is a sort of supervisor with the power to intervene in the middle. So consider the developing process. Latest vibe coding instruments have this kind of approach. The human is on the loop and not more anymore in the loop, because you have the human in the loop to approve any kind of request is a sort of limiting that can approach that cannot escalate. But the point is that this kind of approaches are not indeed very efficient anymore, because we are going instead to consider another kind of approach that is called human in control. That means that the human and AI have a sort of joint partnership in which one is able to, let's say, keep the human under control of everything has been done by AI. And this involves not only, let's say, the coding itself, but also the data that are used by the AI to, let's say, create the work that it's doing, and the control over the answers by the human. So, let's say, assessing the correctness of code. So that is something that the current instruments are not able to do. But the idea is that the code developed by AI will needs to be controlled by the developers. And therefore, we are moving to another kinds of, let's say, approach that is vibe coding versus AI-assisted engineering. The vibe coding is about going fully into the creative flow with an AI, with high-level prompting or whatever it is to submit the questions, essentially forgetting the code exists, as pointed out by the tweets I reported before, in which the generation of the translation, let's say, from the English request to the code was seen more or less as a sort of new kinds of compiler. And this involves accepting a suggestion without deep review and focusing on rapid iterative experimentation and, of course, very rapid release of code and services. On the other side, there is AI-assisted engineering, a methodology that is a methodological integration of AI into a mature software development lifecycle, where the AI is a powerful collaborator, not a replacement for engineering principle. And of course, human engineer remains firmly in control of everything, like I said before. Just to say, introduce the concept in a more pictorial way, there is three kinds of, let's say, vibe words on the left side. The vibe coder, which gives so too much rope to the eye, leaving to the eye the freedom of doing what uh, mm, everything it wants without much control. Then there is a sort of rodeo or prisoner. There are two kinds of approaches in which, through proper gates, the creativity of the LLMs is controlled by the developers in order to understand the code and obtain something that is working very well. This is more or less where we are today. We are moving rapidly to the AI-assisted engineering. That is something that is, let's say, treats first of all the AI as a scaffolding. And just to let you understand, you probably have heard the term of AI harness. That is sort of, let's say, closing or limiting the ways in which AI can create stuff, directing it within the, let's say, guardrails of what engineering, but by the engineering point of view, is acceptable. Um, and of course, this also means a new software development stack that is becoming interesting if you think to the requirements of the cyber resilience stack, that is to create secure code. So this new deal of secure code is going to be created by not only more programming language, probably. There are several rumors that report that the generation that starts to work these days is going to be one of the last, if not even the last one, who have learned to program manually but will not do it in the work environment. So there we have agents and sub-agents handling a lot of different kind of functionalities, from the integration with the IDE to the MCP servers, tools, plugins, prompt, context memory, engineering contexts, and so on and so on. Because, and this is the last slide, the idea is to move rapidly, and we are doing this in these very days, to a sort of partnership where the AI tools are co-pilots and non-autopilots. They can help fly the plane, but a human pilot must chart the course and be ready to grab the control. So this is the new concept. The human strengths, this is leveraging on the strengths of both the humans and the AI. The human strengths, of course, are in defining the problem, understanding concept, and putting the intelligence, of course, on everything. These strengths, on the other side, are instead traversing vast solution spaces, writing boilerplate code, accelerating implementation, and identifying patterns. So, just to conclude, the future of engineering is not anymore in prompt and pray. There is a sort of funny way to say which is the most common way to use AI today in vibe coding. It is about instead building augmented workflows where AI amplify human design and human ordains in AI's excesses. And this is more or less my conclusion. And then I can handle back to Angelo for the last comments on this part. And then, Angelo, I depicted a sort of, let's say, worrisome kind of scenario that is going to change a lot in the coming years. I mean, just a few months ago, I wasn't even talking about AI engineering. Everything was vibe coding. And there is also a problem that I didn't mention in my presentation, but is, let's say, quite interesting. There are the costs. It has just of yesterday the news that Uber exceeded the allocated cost for their vibe coding activities. So this is something that is interesting from one side on to say how much they use vibe coding, even if vibe coding, as I said, is let's say not the correct term anymore. But anyway, just to understand each other. And on the other side, the costs that are doomed to escalate a bit.
Yeah, I think that most personally, from your presentation, I was more scared on the fact that in a few years there will be not people that they will experience the enthusiasm to create the code and then to have everything automatized. But I believe that baseline needs to be there, and if we lose the skills, and so I think that we will not be able even to use this tool effectively. How you can tell to a tool to do something if you don't know how to do it. So I still believe that there is a way in the middle, and I don't believe it is a transformation, but I don't believe that will be radical. It is a tool like the others and need to be used and seen as a tool like the others in the center in the evolution. But at the beginning, like I said, I was speaking and focused more in my presentation with the vulnerability handling, and so how difficult it is to chase vulnerability and how to manage vulnerability. And we were speaking also before, Enrico, before starting, about the news that I was looking at, that NIST recently said that they will not enrich anymore all the vulnerability on the CV vulnerability, because they are receiving a submission of 263% more of vulnerability, because these are generated by the AI. And And I think that this is a surge, they even mentioned, that is largely attributed to AI-assisted software that they generated this vulnerability. And so we cannot keep up with that. And I think that one of the way, and I also mentioned, is to focus on security by default. I'm curious regarding the presentation that you have made, how uptake is taking the challenge and help to integrate in DevSecOps, and how can help also SME, small medium enterprise, to reach this objective instead of chasing vulnerability. So maybe I'm curious also to look at this viewpoint if it's possible.
Yeah. While we were thinking, I was also thinking to another point that is interesting to add to your point of view. Let's consider this case. Well, of course, the AI are also useful to say increase the number of vulnerabilities and potentially the overall security of the code, of course. But the point is that suppose that one day there will be a vulnerability on a code on a product that's on the market that was coded through AI. Who is responsible? Because the supply chain is changing. It's not anymore the developer alone. Who is responsible for the bug? The developer, the AI model, or the data that were ingested by the AI model?
I think that the responsible will not change. Under the law, the manufacturer is responsible, and whatever tool you use doesn't shift the responsibility. The regulation cannot give the
From the
responsibility to a
cyber
tool.
actors for sure. Yeah.
So that will not change. A tool remain a tool, and we need to look at that as a tool, not like a sentient entities. So that has a role and responsibility. Who uses has the role and responsibility, I guess.
And
But it's interesting point of view, because sometimes we forgot that, and we say, okay, AI is doing it. No, you are giving the data AI. AI is telling you, is doing what you are telling them to do. And maybe they have the same biases of us, like the confirmation biases and so on, because it was trained by our data. So it's a reflection of that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And for example, also, it is a problem, let's say, also considering the software bill of material, which is one of the mandatory requirements of Cyber Resilience Act. So the software bill of material, let's say, if the code is relatively obscure because someone else done it, it's a sort of, let's say, external contractor. The AI is a sort of external contractor, gives you the code made, and that's all. From that point of view, of course, this is something that is still not well regulated, or well, say, even scientifically speaking, is not well understood.
I see like AI like an auditor that needs to become smarter with their questions, because even CABs, conformity assessment body, they will assess tool that they never see, that they never saw that tools, and so but they ask the right questions, they look at the right information, they understand what are the common problems. And standardization, they are creating a kind of level of the state of the art. You need to build up to the level of the state of the art and make sure that you can use tools like AI to do activity faster, smarter, and with the right effectiveness that is at the moment possible with the technology that we have now. But I know that there is a lot of hallucination, and I think that we see it. But like I said, you need to still know how things are made, and or understand what are the smart questions that you can ask to get what you're looking for.
Yeah. And also another problem that I see is from the opposite side, that is AI, for example, for example, very small models are directly buried inside the products. For example, I was thinking about smart toys with an AI inside, or with smartphones or whatever. And of course, it is scientifically proven that is impossible to harden an AI and prevent it to, let's say, divert the behavior. So starting, for example, uh, to insult a kid that is playing with an AI-enabled toy, for example, or things like those. And in that case, of course, there is an interesting relation with the AI Act because for some of the applications are not considered critical, let's say, by the AI Act point of view, but in a way, there is the possibility to have so an AI inside that creates a sort of psychological, for example, harms or minor problems, but in a way, personally speaking, are problems, serious problems. Yeah.
I think that you are highlighting also another problem, and we are expanding also to the AI Act, and this is the reason why it's important that we are keeping regulation as the AI Act, and we are leading Europe in the world how to regulate this kind of technology, because leaving this unregulated can be a risk for toys or you don't know what they are saying, or all the other product that like a surveillance system. And also you can use this technology even for war, because now even for the attack of the SA on the school in Iran, allegedly they say that they use AI with all the information, and there was the human that maybe they believed that the information was right, that they were targeting a military point, but then was a school with kids there. And so even how you use it and how you use it responsible, that is critical. I don't know if this information is right or not, but this is just to say that even in military use, surveillance use, this technology used by dictators or by other type of institution to manipulate the opinions. So we need to make careful how the technology is used and have the right guardrail. I understand that it's difficult to put the guardrail to the AI into this technology, and then company that they want to maximize the use, but we need also to look at the societal aspect and to understand how not to go too fast, but to understand where to stop, think,
Yeah.
put this
Yeah.
boundary and build up.
That is also interesting, of course, adding on your concerns. It is becoming difficult because, of course, the AI are today the most exemplary, let's say, sample of a software as a service, because they are completely on the other side of the of the ocean. They are not even a data center is hosted in Europe. Like for example, for Azure or AWS, you have some sort of data centers. They are hosted in Europe. But in that case, it's just one data center that is in the United States. That's all. So that is going to be problematic, even because, of course, Europe is not able to, let's say, keep up on that kind of race. Uh, and of course, this opened the doors for these various mobile language models. There is another kind of story. There is, let's say, even sort of, let's say, borderline in the definition of an AI Act. And this is, of course, finds me, let's say, I agree with you with the needs of keeping updated the different kinds of act, the Cyber Resilience Act and the AI Act and the even for example, also the new directive on the product's liability, for example. That is a kind of legislation that is not yet discussed that much, but introduced in the last version the responsibility for cyber security kinds of defects, and between the harms done by defective products, they also introduced the psychological effects. So this is something interesting from the producer's point of view.
But that is good because now, if you demonstrate that there is a damage, you can create class action. So it means that the damage will not be only defined, but will be also class action from millions of users. And I think that there will be also more interest for lawyers to create these class actions. So manufacturers, they need to be a little bit more careful. And I think that this is a way to create this, how to say, balance between manufacturer and interest for the society, and I think that rules as that are very welcome for the interest of having a more secure digital society.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I think that we exhausted the time available for the webinar. It was very interesting, and thank you, Angelo, for joining us. And
the
thanks
topic
everybody
are
for
very
watching.
interesting, and we can speak even for hours. So I think that we need to
Yeah,
put a kind of.
I know. It is an interesting kind of era from the technological point of view, not only from the geopolitical point of view, let's say. Yeah.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you so much also for this interesting discussion, and looking forward also to have more conversation like this. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Angelo.